Good afternoon. We'll call the November 30th Downtown Facilities Committee to order. And I guess the first thing we need to do is find out if there's any public comment. Do we have any public comment? Okay, not seeing anything. Yeah.
We did get comments, written comments in the email. I assume that the committee members have seen those.
Yes.
Is that true? Everybody see him? Okay, let's move on to minutes approval for November 10th. If somebody move it, please. Rich, second. Okay, Deborah, thank you. Any changes, any comments? All in favor?
I think you have to take the roll, Dave.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, let's do Rich, John.
Yes.
Let's do Michael Lane. Mike here.
He is not.
His truck's down front.
He went to the courthouse over here.
Leslie
Yes.
and Deborah.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Man, those folks, the ones that are here. Okay. Is Lisa Holmes with us yet?
Her name's there.
I see your little black box.
Lisa, are you there? Okay.
Maybe Katie was planning to present the resolution? Or the map?
Hi, everybody. I was just trying to send a Teams message to Lisa to see if she is here, but I can certainly jump in and try to provide a little bit of the background for everybody. Let's see, so just kind of bringing people up to speed that we do have a formal proposal from INHS, and we do have Joe Bose and Leslie Ackerman here to speak and try to answer any questions that you might have about the proposal. Just as a refresher, we got to the proposal by getting some direction from this committee earlier in the fall that there was interest in pursuing the idea of permanently affordable for sale housing on Sears Street. And so we kind of came down to the fact that that would be through a community housing trust. There were two entities in the community who could provide that type of housing, INHS and Habitat for Humanity. They were both offered the same information and the ability to propose something to us. We had meetings with both entities, and Habitat respectfully declined the opportunity due to their staffing issues. INHS has moved forward and has presented us with something to consider today. And to help that along, this committee asked Jay Franklin to do an estimate of the market value of the property, which he has provided to you all through a memo. And staff has teed up a couple of resolutions if the legislature chooses to move forward with this. Oh, Lisa, there I see you. Do you want to take over?
Sure. Thank you very much, Katie. I was all teed up on Zoom and my microphone stopped working, so I just made the determination to walk over here. So my apologies for being late. But thank you, Katie. I think you covered pretty much everything that I was planning to cover, just to, you brought everybody up to speed, I heard. And all of the background information, I think that you need to make decisions or have been communicated to you or included in your packet, but just to make the public aware and the legislature aware that staff has been doing due diligence in the background on this. There is a land transactions policy and there's a local law of 1981 which applies to these transactions. So we've been meeting administration, planning, finance, county attorney, assessment, and facilities to make sure that we're doing our due diligence and homework, and that all of the laws and policies apply, and that you have what you need to do your decision making, and we're here to answer your questions. There is a resolution in your packet for consideration, making a determination that the subdivision on Sears Street is no longer needed for public use. It's one of the resolutions before you in the packet. It probably should be considered first among the two resolutions. Then there's the resolution designating preferred provider for the property and authorizing the sale of the property to INHS. And as Katie said, when the legislature determined that you wanted to develop the property for permanently affordable for sale homes, there were two possible entities that could come forward with Community Land Trust that would be able to provide this service. And they were both provided with a standardized information and criteria, and INHS was the entity which came forward in the process that submitted a formal proposal. So we feel that there was a fair and standardized process that was followed, and INHS has expressed interest, documented its qualifications, and shared the proposal to develop the permanently affordable for sale homes on Sears Street, provided some conceptual designs packet. And their proposal includes the purchase of property from the county at fair market value, which is determined by our county assessment office director, Jay Franklin. And that statement is also included in the packet. And Katie had also sent some other supporting documentation from INHS in answer to a question that came up at the last meeting regarding ground lease and the legal and financial implications for home buyers and the county if you were to consider that as an option. So I think given all of that, that's just an overview of all of the materials that were provided to you in advance and are included in the packet and the resolutions before you today for potential action.
Thank you, Lisa, appreciate that. I guess at this point in time, I'm going to open it up for questions. Anybody on the board that has a question, or anybody on the legislature. Deborah Dawson, we'll start with you.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I'm very much in favor of going forward with the affordable housing plan. I do have a concern or a question about the subdivision of the property versus the zoning that the city is either working on or putting in place. And by now I've gotten so much information and seen so many maps, I'm not sure which one is which, but it seemed to me that the piece of property that we would be conveying to INHS is not coextensive with this perimeter of the residential zoning. In other words, the residential zoning goes into the piece that we would be keeping and presumably using for parking. So my question, I guess, is that going to be a problem? Or can the county basically say, well, we're the county and we're not required. I recall that this issue came up in connection with uses of the property when we were considering buying it.
Go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, you raise a good point, Deborah, and I raised this in some email exchanges, but my concern is we want to maintain maximum flexibility with the ability to do things with the remaining parcel.
Right.
It's R2B and a zone called CSU, Courthouse Special Use District, which is sort of a one of a kind. If we wanted to sell this property at some time in the future to somebody else, they would be subject to the zoning in a way we as the county would not be.
Right.
And so if part of our charge is to preserve maximum value for the taxpayer, we would want to sell for as much money as we could the remaining property. Getting the zoning to a point that there's flexibility of possible future uses would do that, or at least preserve our ability to do that. Meaning that now is the time if we're going to do it. Katie, thank you for sharing your email indicating how hard it is to change zoning. But that's exactly the point on why we probably want to do it now. While there's some leverage for the city to undertake to do the work. If we wait, we're dependent on the city feeling like it. And I'm not confident it'll get done now. And we will not have protected the taxpayer.
More to this point, Rich, would it be possible, since the city has consistently said that it wants us to put this housing in, would it be possible to make our sale to INHS contingent on the city moving the boundaries of that residential zoning zone, I guess, to match the boundaries of the property that we convey to INHS for the purpose of building housing?
Maybe.
Jonathan Wood, do you have anything to say about that?
Sure. I mean, obviously we can ask the city. I'm not sure that, that the timing is going to be helpful. I mean, it seems to me the zoning issue is a pre-existing issue, whether we sell this or not. The big issue is not with the parcel that we sell, it's on what remains. And that issue exists already.
I understand that, Jonathan, but the point is the city, we have received pressure not only from the residents in the area, but from the city itself to return a portion of this property to housing use. If they want it so bad, let them put their money where their mouth is.
Well, I don't disagree with that, and we can certainly ask the city. Obviously, the zoning as it exists makes no sense.
That's right.
And but that situation, all I'm saying is we divide off this parcel if the legislature decides to do it and sell this part. It's not really this part, which is the problem. It's everything else. That problem sort of, this sale doesn't change that. Maybe you're right. Maybe we can use this sale as some kind of
leverage.
So maybe you're right, but in itself, it doesn't really affect this transaction. If the problem is really on what remains, which is already a problem.
I understand that.
Okay.
But nevertheless, we're doing something that with property that we paid for, that everybody says they want. So we're accommodating you, accommodate us. What's wrong with asking for that?
Nothing wrong with asking for it, in my opinion. I think we have every right to ask for it.
I agree. Thank you.
My question is, does the zoning affect the fair market value of that particular piece of property, John?
Of the remaining piece, you bet it does.
Well, I mean, Jay is more the expert on that, but I would think yes. You know, the odd zoning has always affected the value of that property, I think.
That's why we got it so cheap.
Jay, can you,
Yeah, there was multiple deals that fell through on the property before we bought it. Mainly because of the historic zone and also the city's suggestion that they were going to start enforcing the no parking in an R2B zone if it ever sold to a new owner. But yeah, obviously what you can do to a property affects the value of that land. So the more you can do on that property, the more options you have, the more densely you could develop something, the more that land is worth.
okay, thank you.
Leslie put something in the chat. We can't entirely read. It says, if we want to rezone this second parcel, we should propose B1 or B2, City of Ithaca zone, to allow for max flexibility and definitely allows for housing development within it.
Martha?
Number one, it's pretty hard to hear Dave from there and a little bit hard to hear Rich too. I would like to ask in a minute that the screen be brought up so somebody can actually outline all the lines that we're talking about. I think, I'm not sure that somehow holding this sale hostage to eventual rezoning or promise of rezoning, it makes any sense. I think, as Katie pointed out, this is a long-term process. And I think if we go ahead with the INHS sale, you know, we're acting in good faith and we deal with our city partners in good faith. And you can be as cynical as you want to be, Deborah. I can see your face already. But I really think I wouldn't want to hold up this piece because the other piece, because the county remainder is bizarrely zoned. I think we worked through that with the city. But
This isn't cynicism, Martha. It's just looking out to make the most of our investment. And that's
okay, so I wasn't
our
quite
duty to our taxpayers.
I wasn't finished. So I would like to really see that we heave, you know, cleave off this one piece and enable it to move forward. Can I, otherwise it's years until, it could be years until this happens. Can I ask that the parcel that whoever had, maybe Jay share the screen so we can actually see the pieces we're talking about?
I think Megan is ready to share that.
Thanks, Megan and Katie. So that's what we're keeping. I mean, this is what we'd sell versus what we'd keep. Help me understand the pink and the green.
So the pink is the residential zone and the green is the courthouse special use zone.
So we would be asking that small, like 25% of our lot also be made courthouse special use. Is that what we'd be asking or what?
Yes.
Well, I think Leslie was suggesting to make it a business district, which is what the city was just trying to clean up and it failed at Common Council. So they've just been through this process of trying to get rid of the CSU zone and make it a B1A and it failed.
All right, so really, I think this is a complex process. It doesn't sound like the county even has a coherent or like determined, considered strategy on what we'd ask for. I really hope we don't hold up the INHS sale pending cleaning up the zoning. It's been decades since they've had it and since they've dealt with it appropriately. Thanks.
Hey, Gorman.
Thanks, Dave. And thanks, Katie and Lisa, for the presentation. I agree that I don't think we should make the sale of this, the parcel on Sear Street predicated on the city rezoning part of the other parcel. Although it would be great to have some type of verbal agreement for them that, hey, we're doing this, please look at this. But I think it would be different if we weren't at this stage. Katie, we can see your email, just so you know, on the screen. So I think it would be different if we were at a different stage, but right now we've asked for plans, proposed plans from developers. We have one from INHS. We're looking at agreeing going forward, giving them permission to go forward, and looking at going forward with the sale. So I think it's too late to do that. And at some point, I would like to discuss about the sidewalk, listening to the people in the community and thinking about it. I would like to not have the sidewalk going through to Sears Street. It just doesn't make sense for me for a couple of reasons. Thank you.
Okay, Katie?
Yeah, I just wanted to make the point that part of the advantage of selecting a preferred developer right now is that they can start trying to apply for and put their funding together to the financing package to actually make this happen. If we put a condition on sale of rezoning the remaining property, that is going to make that very difficult for them to do that work. And it is also going to make it so the timeline will be extended a lot, because there is a full, as I said, a full public process that has to be followed with public hearings. And there are a lot of points for input for the community for rezoning, which is an important part of zoning, is to have that happen. So I understand the desire to make this happen. I think the city is on board. I've always heard them talking about wanting to clean up the zoning in this area, but it's not a quick process.
Okay. Go ahead, Liz.
Thanks. I agree. It's definitely not going to be a quick process to rezone, but it does seem important. This is clearly spot zoning. This is not any sort of regular zone. It will be a challenge for a developer to come up and understand what this zone means. CSU I'm talking about here, not R2B. Residential is pretty clear. I don't think that the sale to INHS for affordable housing on Sear Street should be contingent upon anything happening on the rest of the parcel, frankly. I do think it's an opportune moment to begin both processes. I think that these can happen in parallel. Let's start talking with the city about rezoning the rest of the parcel. The two can start at the same time, but they don't have to remain linked, because the timelines will definitely entangle any potential advancement in bringing housing to the community now, which I think is a top priority. My only suggestion for what we have on the plate at the moment is that we look at extending the parcel that we're interested in selling to include the footprint that is the walkway at the moment. That should not be part of this. Right now, it looks like a little flag lot coming off of Sears Street, and that should be part of what we're interested in. We're interested in redeveloping Sears Street into residential. I know we haven't talked about the walkway yet in this conversation, although there's enormous conversation happening in the lead up to this about the walkway. I think it's extraneous. We have great city block sidewalks that surround this entire block. Let's use them. Let's make sure that we prioritize housing for Sears Street and utilize that space for housing, yards, and the space there to return residential to this community. That's my suggestion.
Mike?
Well, I've got to respond to Leslie. Leslie, I disagree with you totally on that. And I realize this is down in your district, but let's think about.
It's my district.
Well, whichever district, it's part of Ithaca, excuse me.
And are you talking about the walkway or the zone?
I'm talking about the walkway.
Can we finish the zoning first, Dave?
Okay, let's finish the zoning.
Yeah, can we have a comment on zoning and then go to the walkway? We're going to be talking about the walkway for a long time.
Okay, let's finish the zoning then. I'm thinking that it's better to move ahead and get this project in line, in motion. And worry about the property, the other part of our property over there, rezoning it somewhere in the future, mainly because it will hold this process up, move it to a new legislature, and it's basically a start over. Because there's so many new people on the legislature that haven't been involved in this whole process. So I'm not totally in favor of going in that direction at this point in time. We're not going to sell that property for Lord knows how many years, but it won't be right away, I'm sure. So, you know, I don't think we have to worry about it today. Okay, Rich.
I wasn't saying making the resolutions we're considering today contingent on getting zoning changed. What I'm saying is we should have initiated this conversation with the city quite a while ago, and we did not. We are giving away our leverage, whatever leverage we have. And I guess I don't understand why we would do that. I feel like it's irresponsible. Lisa, if I could put you on the spot, is there a reason to not talk to the city about zoning change now and try to get them to initiate what they really should have done a long time ago to clean this up?
Well, my understanding is the effort to change the zoning did come forward and failed, so we can reach back out and try to understand why and see about getting it back on the table.
But that was along Court Street. Failed. This is a section of Tioga Street, our property on Tioga Street, which is now going to have split zoning. And at least we could get it all into CSU. It would be better for them to do their job in terms of getting it to B1 or B2. But why don't we have that conversation? I just don't understand that.
That's what I suggested, you know, before the meeting, was that you and I, and Lisa or somebody should talk to the city county council.
Is that okay?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, if I could get back in, please. If you want to kill this deal, then make it contingent on having the city change the zoning.
We're not talking about making it.
If you're, well, that's what I've been hearing. I'm sorry, I've been listening to folks that are talking out here.
I think that's.
That was just my question, Mike.
That's a perception.
But if you hold up this deal for a change in zoning, I guess I may be the only person that watches the way common council works, but they aren't the most organized when it comes to issues like this. And I don't know why they would want to speed this along. If we've made a decision to sell this piece of land to INHS, but for a small strip to benefit our employees, then I think that we ought to go ahead with that rather than to have it sit. If you want to have it sit and try to get something changed, as soon as the sale happens, Rich, you aren't going to have any leverage. I don't think you're going to have any leverage anyway, in my opinion.
More now than later. But I'm not asking that we make the sale contingent on changing the zoning model. I didn't say that. I'm not saying.
Martha?
I think Henry was first.
Okay, Henry?
Yes, can Katie or Megan tell us about the prior zoning failure in the Common Council, how close the vote was, what the issues were or whatever?
I can tell you a little bit, but I don't know. I didn't attend the meeting. I will say that it did include the Tioga Street side. It would have just swapped out the CSU zone for the B1A zone. So it would have still remained a split parcel. For our discussion, the remainder that the county would hold would still be in two zones. My understanding is that many people in the community came out against this zoning change, not necessarily adjacent neighbors, but city residents. So I don't know more than that, and I don't know what the final vote was on it.
Okay, thank you.
Martha?
Yeah, I think a conversation with the city is important. I would remind folks, we have an interim commissioner of planning or planning director, whatever her title is. We have a change in a number of council members in a month. I think there's time to figure out what the issues are. And, you know, did this fail because of other local issues, or did it fail because of our issue? I think there's really, there are real opportunities to get the decision reconsidered. I would absolutely agree with Mike Lane that said if we hold up the sale with INHS, even pending a conversation, even, you know, saying, let's first wait to talk to the city, the deal could go away. I mean, this is, most proposals for a sale or for scope of work are time sensitive. It says, you know, this proposal is good for 30 days from this date. I think we risk losing the opportunity altogether of creating this housing. We have opportunities to work with the new council, with the new director of planning, and I think we should go ahead and do that. I don't think whether the sale goes through or not is leverage with the city at all. I can't imagine that that's even relevant.
Shauna?
Yeah, I think that we should not rush this through. I mean, we really have to figure out where we're going with this, and do the right thing and do our research and get the right feedback. The one thing that I also think is important is that if we do end up doing the zoning and the property's worth or valued more than it was currently assessed at, then I'm wondering if we would have to sell it at that price. You know, I guess my question to INHS is it really that big of a deal for them to take over the zoning?
The zoning doesn't affect their parcel at all. Their parcel is.
That doesn't affect their parcel. It's only our parcel with the remainder.
Right, but my understanding was that they were going to actually try and get their parcel rezoned as well. Is that incorrect?
No. We do not need a rezoning. Hi, this is Joe Bose from INHS. We do not need a rezoning to build the 4 units on Sears Street.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you.
Sure.
Okay. So I think pretty much from what I'm hearing, most people are in agreement with the fact that we should just go ahead and finish this up and worry about the rezoning down the road. But we should definitely worry about it. And that's kind of the way I take it. I'm hoping you guys are all taking it that way. I want to move to the walkway discussion.
May I comment before we move on to water?
Okay,
Thank you. So I'm clearly in the minority in this, so I know I'm not going to prevail here, but I just want to be on the record of why I won't, when it comes to the legislature, I will not be voting for this. The first rule of intelligent tinkering is to save all the pieces. It's a quote by Aldo Leopold. This property was purchased for county purposes, and I do not believe we have yet determined what our county needs are. So therefore, I feel like it's premature to be selling this parcel off. I don't think we have done planning. I don't think we've done basic planning on the county's space needs. We have 2 parcels at the moment, and we're talking about building a bank, a building on the Key Bank site, that's what we call it. But do we even know if that building would accommodate all our departmental space needs? Does building that building require additional parking downtown campus. Will we lose any parking spots on our current campus if that building is built? We talked about putting a geothermal system in to the parking lot there. Will that result in the loss of any parking spaces? Do we know how many parking spots will be left on the Sears Street site if we were to sell this parcel off? Those are a lot of questions that are all interconnected in this determination of whether we sell one piece of it off. Selling land is irreversible. Think about the old library site and the regrets that many legislators have about that, myself included. And then finally, I would say that, regardless of the fact that housing is a good thing, this land was purchased for the county, and that adding 3 or 4 houses to the affordable housing market in this town is literally a drop in the bucket, and it comes at the cost of an irreplaceable future option for the county. So for those reasons, I'm opposed to this. Thanks.
Mike?
Dan, I couldn't agree with what you're saying anymore, but I think the handwriting is on the wall here. We've had at least 2 legislators who have pushed this from day one to sell this property. Instead of the long-range planning that you're talking about, which we should be doing and thinking about, it hasn't happened. I've come to the conclusion that the best we can do, hopefully, is to at least keep a right-of-way walkway to help our employees if we continue to use it. I have no doubt after this sale happens, and I think it's going to happen, that we're going to see a lot of pressure from the same people to sell the rest of it. And I think that's what we're hearing in this conversation about, is it more valuable if we can get the zoning changed? So I don't know where it's going to go, but Dan, I think the train has left the station on that, and I'm sorry to say it has, but I think it's been from day one that we've been trying to make people understand the kinds of things that you've said, and we haven't been successful.
Okay, I'm not sure who was first, so I'm gonna go with Sean and then Leslie.
Sorry, mine's an old hand.
Old hand? Okay. All right, Leslie, you're up.
Just to respond to this very briefly. Housing has been long planned for in this community. It is the most acute need countywide that we have of all of our systems. I don't know how we could place any other priority above that. I got to be frank. Definitely not parking. I already sent a long email to the rest of the legislators today. I will not relive that, but it's a very, very low land use. The lowest of land use is superficial. We're in a downtown community here. We have a real opportunity here for people to live in a live-walk environment in affordable housing. Let's not miss the opportunity. Thanks.
Yeah, I guess I'd just like to respond to the idea that we haven't gone through real consideration of our options and potential uses. We've had a year of meetings to talk about our downtown facilities and to consider different options. I don't feel uncomfortable with making this decision today. I agree with what Leslie said about the need for affordable housing and how, while it's a small effort, for those families that get a house in the city of Ithaca at an affordable rate, it has real meaning. And I'd also say that you can always wait. You can always do something later. But in a city, there's cost to that. If you leave property undeveloped and dead, there's cost. You don't have the synergy and the interaction and the use that makes a city a city. You know, I don't want to pick a sore, but having the old public library essentially empty for 2 decades has a cost. That's not good for our community. Use of property in densely built up areas matters. And I'm totally comfortable with trying to repair the street wall on Sear Street from when these houses were torn down to bring it back. It's a good thing.
Okay, at this point, I guess if there's any more comments on the walkway, I'd like to hear them. Martha?
Yeah, I wasn't sure which comment we were still on. I appreciated Katie's message this afternoon. And unfortunately for the public, when there's so much traffic on email, then people don't hear what the actual conversations are. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat something that I put into email because committee members might not have actually had a chance to read it either. So I think what's relevant about the walkway is where the entrances to our office buildings are. And maybe if we could, if Megan's the queen of sharing screens, maybe you can put that latest map up so that people can really visualize that the distance to the distance from parking to the entrance to the Tompkins building, whether it's the front door or the back door, that's obviously more accessible with a Sears Street walkway. If you're trying to get to the entrance to the old jail, that's really in the middle of that block. And I think, if there's a step difference or two, it really depends on where in the parking lot you might be parking. And it seems that's a coin toss for any employees. Therefore, in the old jail, it really doesn't matter. 6 of one, and a half dozen of another. For the employees in the main courthouse, their entrance is either front or back door. And again, I think in that case, Tioga Street is closer. And then if you're going down to think about building C or the new corner where the center of government would be, that'll be far more accessible by Tioga Street. Nobody would imagine walking across to Sears and then down in order to get to the new center of government building. So who does this really matter for to have a Sears walkway? Well, it matters for legislators, but we've now, since we first had these conversations, we've created, I can't remember, it's 5 or 6 parking spaces designated for legislators. So during the day, it would be very uncommon for legislators not to actually have parking right next to the building. So Sears Street doesn't matter. Once the center of government is built, the theory is the planning department would move from that building to the new center. So they become Tioga Street fans, not Sears Street. The people who are left are 3 or 4 county clerks who come in once in the morning and leave in the afternoon. And they would be basically the only people left for whom there's even any 1-minute convenience, according to Katie's email. 1 minute difference in walking from one side versus the other. So I think what we're talking about is compromising the INHS options for the sake of 3 or 4 people walking in and out of their office once a day. Compromising those housing plans, shaving off the open space that'd be available to those affordable housing homeowners, and creating a liability and a maintenance responsibility forever for the county for virtually no benefit. So I really think we should take the long view on this and understand that the Tioga Street route is going to be by far more important, and Sears will be basically irrelevant. And I think we don't see that now, but frankly, legislators really don't need to use it now anyway, because mostly we can be right next to Tompkins building anyway. Thank you.
Michelle?
Thank you. I actually think that a walkway makes sense in this area. Because typically whenever you see a walkway, it does in fact get used. If there isn't a walkway, you know, what we've seen historically is that people create a walkway and it just goes unpaved, and people will be cutting through other people's backyards. You know, as far as moving forward in this project, you know, as far as I'm concerned, this has all been a compromise. The amount of land that we are selling to INHS has been a compromise. It continues to be a compromise. Many of us want to see affordable housing available. So I think to say that we haven't had a compromise, I think is you know, really not accurate. As far as the walkway, I don't think that it's for a handful, 3 employees going once a day to their office. There's a lot more to it than that. And I think we're going to see our community use it. So I would definitely support the walkway.
Deborah?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Martha, I'm not sure that your analysis of 3 or 4 employees would stand up to any really rigorous examination, but that's beside the point. I know what my experience was when I was recovering from my hip surgery and how difficult it was to find a parking space when the parking lots were reduced in area due to piles of snow that were plowed out of the way. The sidewalks in the city are not reliably shoveled. I ended up walking down the middle of the street frequently, but I really fail to see why there is such service about this 5-foot wide sidewalk that would accommodate the needs of our employees in icy, snowy weather. You're talking about 4 houses that INHS is going to be putting up on the property that they buy. So if you divide that 5 feet by 4 lots, that's what, 1.25 feet, a lot? Is that really going to make that much difference? To me, this insistence that we must transfer every square inch of the Sears Street frontage is like overreach. This is a county-owned piece of property that we paid for fair and square. We want to take a 5-foot strip of it for the benefit of county employees, and people are having cows because people on 1 block in the city are upset about that. And frankly, I don't care if they're upset. They wanted housing. They're getting housing where they have for years lived with a big ugly hedge and a huge nasty parking lot on the other side. To me, I have no sympathy if people want to nitpick and choose about how they don't want this 5-foot strip. Too bad. You know, you're getting your housing. This is a balancing of competing interests. And that's all I'm willing to give it to them. And if you insist that we're not going to have that parking strip, then I will not vote for this at all. Because county employees' health and safety and convenience is important to me as chair of BCP.
Okay, Annie Corman.
Thank you. Martha just put in something in the chat that INHS proposes the county retain ownership of the 12-foot wide section along the southern edge of the parcel. So that's towards Court Street. Is that the area that we're talking about, a proposed walkway?
I know it's on the map that I saw. It was 5 feet wide at the Sears Street entrance.
I think that includes the existing easement where the neighbor parks their car. But so maybe somebody can explain that, because I saw that and I wasn't sure what that meant. And perhaps we don't need the screen anymore. But so maybe Joe can explain that 12 feet.
Leslie, can you explain the 12 feet? I mean, basically that flag that you just had up on the screen is what we would propose, that you continue to retain ownership of, assuming you want the walkway. Originally, there was talk about an easement that INHS would have, but we don't want to purchase property that we're not going to use. So it's just much cleaner to have the county continue to own it if you're going to have the walkway for your, but in terms of the depth, I don't know, Leslie, if you have that information.
Yeah, the issue, as some Joe or Martha just noted, there's a 7-foot deep easement in the southwest corner that belongs to 109 Sears Street. They currently park there. And if the walkway then goes straight across for 5 feet, it creates a section, a corner in the southeast that basically is an isolated chunk. And so we propose that the 5-foot strip across that would be the walkway, plus the 7 feet across that would be the driveway easement, plus that little orphan island of land that would be inaccessible for us, that all of that stay with the county. We have no ability to use or access any of it. And so it doesn't make sense for us to purchase that. So the county would be able to keep the area for the walkway. And then there would be that extra corner that would probably be able to still be a couple of parking spots.
So that's on page 8 of the committee packet. I think you can see what Leslie just described.
So,
Wouldn't take that easement anyway, right?
We own that way.
so we're looking at selling or the parking space to the adjacent property, or somehow transferring that parking space. So the way I look at it, which I know it's different than some other people, but the way that I look at it is, if there was already housing on Sears Street, I wouldn't be trying it to, if we had a parking lot there or some type of parking, I wouldn't be trying to get land from one of the residents to put a walkway in there. Most of the plan right now is to have use the Key Bank area to have a center of government, which then most people would be going down Tioga Street. And we're not even sure what's going to happen to that, what we're going to do with our Tioga Street property. So even if it was set in stone that it was parking, it just doesn't make sense to the neighborhood, to me, to put a walkway there and kind of cut up a block in a way. So I know it's a little further, and I hear what people are saying. Maybe we need to have more spots, handicap spots, so that people that are needing access, temporarily or permanently to some of our buildings, then I think we could look at that, which I've thought about before. We could probably use more of that, but to me, it doesn't make sense, because right now I'm looking at it that it takes 5 feet away from the housing there. So I wouldn't be in favor of taking away any more land from them.
Okay, let's see, who's next? Deborah. Your hand's still up? Okay. All right. Yeah, Rich.
I don't want to belabor this point. I know everybody's probably made up their mind, but I'm not in favor of retaining this strip. I think you're going to get a better development of houses without it. There has been a history of some inappropriate behavior in that parking lot in the last several years that the pass-through would probably encourage to some degree. We also have the issue with maintaining the property. We'd have to run a power line there to do some lighting, probably, perhaps relying on street light, but that's not optimal for a sidewalk we own. We'd also have to do the trash removal and shoveling for this section that's sort of an orphan if we sold the other parcel or the remaining parcel. And we'd hold liability for it going forward. Now, I know that's subject to prior written notice and all that, but we'd still have it. There's also the issue of the house on Sears Street, number 109, that has the easement for their parking, that you would be running the walkway immediately adjacent to their car. And so there'd be impacts on that house as well as the INHS properties. I just don't think it's really worth it. So I'm going to vote against that aspect of the plan.
Mike, wait a minute, I'm sorry, Martha was up first.
Well, let me just say that there are easements, there are joint driveways, and all kinds of through rights of way all over the city of Ithaca. This isn't something unusual in a densely developed municipality. To say that, well, we might have to run electric there. Well, aren't we going to run electric there for recharging stations for electric vehicles? I hope we are. So that means we're going to have to put in some electric there. If people are worried about lighting in there, you can easily have overhead lights that have directional light that doesn't stray from the property very much. I've seen them and they work fine. This is going to be a convenience for our employees. I realize that there are some folks out there that would like our employees not to drive cars. They want to push our employees into buses or parking lots there on the outskirts and think that that's the way we ought to go. Well, I don't think that that's what employees want to do. And I don't think that we ought to make them do this. For this property to be given away without keeping this right of way, I think it doesn't make any sense. And as far as the other property, well, they're very, very lucky to have that ability to park on that parcel. And I don't think that that's going to interfere that much. And so we shovel all over the place. We plow and shovel. Actually, by some of the original suggestions from INH would have given us a better right of way, probably easier to plow with a pickup truck or something than this will be. But this makes a lot more sense because it's an exit closer to the property that we have developed, which is the courthouse complex. Thank you.
Okay, Martha.
Yeah, I want to picture what Shauna suggested as if, I think I heard her saying this was kind of a community walkway. Think of the paths across the Cornell campus where they, people just walk between buildings and, they end up paving where they walk. So what would we be encouraging? We'd be encouraging the public to walk through our construction zone. The parking lot between the housing and Tioga Street for probably maybe 5 years is basically going to be a construction zone or staging zone for first the housing and then for the county's building. I think we'd be asking for serious trouble if we're encouraging people by placing a walkway from Sears to that kind of a staging area. Remember, you're not going to put a gate up and say county employees only can walk here. It'll be an open walkway inviting people into what is essentially a construction zone. I think you're asking for trouble.
Okay, Leslie.
I just want to share, and I'd love to hear from Leslyn and from Henry and from the other city legislators about, how we feel about city communities, downtown development particularly, and what feels right? This would be a mid-block access point, pretty atypical for downtown. I can think of 3 or 4 alleys total that occur downtown, but often provide some sort of general access for folks and a little bit wider. If you think about the development that is being proposed here, and we think of new residential units on this block, what we're doing is removing some of the width of the lots for development, right? This means narrower lots, potentially narrower houses, but it also means that people will be shimmying through between 2 folks' backyards. It's a little awkward. There's likely to be fencing. It will start to feel a bit like a tunnel. It can get uncomfortable. That said, it's also not necessary. This is not an extra long block. We have plenty of blocks that are much longer than this. And there is sidewalk available on both sides of the block. And it's an extra cost to the county. And it kind of fragments what we're trying to knit back together as part of a residential street. It's not a typical urban treatment. This is not the suburbs, folks. We're downtown. Thanks.
Deborah?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that during the construction phase of our buildings, no one's going to be parking on that lot. And I assume we're going to fence it. If we don't, we're idiots.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks. So as Martha pointed out, Mike pointed out, there are walkways all over the city. And I would say I know because I walk an average of 3 miles a day, according to my phone, majority of it in the city of Ithaca. And it's so interesting to me to hear these described as liabilities. They are assets. Ithaca is a very walkable city, and these paths are well used and well appreciated by walkers. And this one will be too. They're assets, they're not liabilities. I can tell you what is a liability is when I walk into a parking lot or a lot hoping to get across and I find out that it's fenced in the entire way. It's like a corral. That's a very unfriendly item in a walkable city. This is an organization that I joined 35 years ago. It's called the Rails to Trails Conservancy. And the reason it exists, the reason I joined it, that makes so much sense, is that once you take away the ability of people to walk, once you put something permanent in its place, you can almost never get that walkability back. So it would be very short-sighted of us to give away this future option. And I guarantee that in the future, walkers in the city will appreciate that somebody had the foresight to leave a path open for it. Thanks.
Okay, I think at this point, I'd like to move this to a vote, one way or the other.
Towards that end, Dave?
Yeah.
I would move to remove the walkway portion from the sale and sell that land instead to INHS.
I have a second. Leslie, you seconding?
I was raising my hand for clarification. So Rich, what you're proposing is that the county retain that portion?
No, we sell it to INHS.
That we sell it to INHS?
Yes, we do not have.
Thank you.
So there'll be no path.
Thank you.
Correct.
Okay. So have a second. Fails for lack of a second. Okay. I think we need to take this in reverse order, unfortunately. I guess we have to decide if we're going to sell it before we can decide if we don't need it anymore. And so to that end, I'm going to move it as proposed. I need a second.
David, I would suggest you do the no longer needed for public use first. Because if you read the law, it may suggest that, it says you can sell it after declaring it's no longer needed for public use. So I would do that first.
So what happens if we don't decide not to sell it?
You could change your mind and decide that something is needed for public use.
We'll do resolution A first.
Wait a minute, is that what you said, John?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure which one is, I believe.
You want
resolution
us to do the one that says we don't need it anymore, right?
Yeah, the no longer needed for
That's
public
me.
use should go first.
And that's what Dave was trying to do.
Oh, I don't think so. If
Well,
I
that's
did,
not what I was trying to do.
Oh, well, then I
That's because
misunderstood.
had the,
Okay.
Things backwards here in my head. All right, so anyway, we're gonna move resolution A first.
B first.
Designate preferred developer, no, that's wrong.
B.
Gotta do B first. Making a determination that certain real property located in a portion of what was formerly known as 111, 113, 117, and 119 Sears Street in the city of Ithaca is no longer needed for the public. ID 10-549. And I'll move that. I have a second. Deborah Dawson seconds. Okay. Any comments? Anybody want to talk about it? Okay.
I will.
Okay.
I just want to say, I'm going to vote for this. Same way I voted to sell the old library site. Not because I think it's the right thing to do, but simply because I think that there's a majority here that wants to do this, and I support our team.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, and then I'm gonna call the vote, Rich John.
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes?
Leslie McBean,
Yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
I'm a yes, that's unanimous. So, and I will move resolution A. As it is designed with the walkway, designate preferred developer and authorize sale of certain real property located in a portion of what was formerly 111, 113, 117, and 119 Sears Street in the city of Ithaca. ID 10550. I so move. I have a second.
Second.
Seconds. Comments, anyone want to talk more about it? Okay. Not hearing anybody. I'll call the vote. Rich John,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes?
Leslie McBean,
Claiborne, yes.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
and I'm a yes, that's unanimous. Thank you all very much.
Is that it?
That's it, that's all that's on the agenda.
Outstanding.
Got through it.
Thank you.
Vote to adjourn.
Not even 5 o'clock. I'm disappointed.
Uh,
All right. Thank y'all, guys. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
next
Thank
week.
you.
Thank you.
Stay safe, everybody.